when people discover that you know, their partner wants a divorce, or often it's not a complete surprise. Like usually on some level at that stage in the relationship, they know that there's issues, they know that there's problems, and it's experienced as a shock and a complete surprise, because it's something that they don't really ever want to believe is going to happen. I know for myself, particularly in my second marriage, I knew something was wrong, but I never ever thought it was like going to happen, like a divorce was going to happen. And so what for most people, they experience it as complete shock. They experience complete anger, betrayal, let down, confusion, sadness, intense raw pain. I mean, people sort of say, does, like your heart breaks, there's that sensation of real, physical pain. It's actually a physical pain, from sickness to, people feel completely nauseous. So, the overwhelming level of emotional intensity that someone gets like sort of into at that particular moment in time, and it can go on for like weeks, and is so overwhelming that people just actually don't know how to cope with it. And I think that is what produces the element of fear within us, because suddenly you are thrown into the unknown and into a place of, what is going to happen to me? The world that I knew, that was so certain and so like, this is my life, is suddenly what's happened. Like literally overnight, your life can be wiped out, and you just don't know what the future is. So it is massive uncertainty, and we are creatures who love to have certainty, and when we've got that sense of certainty, we feel we're okay in the world. And the minute that your certainty is taken away, particularly in the form of the person that is supposedly loves you the most in the world, who's behind you 100% of the time, who's there with you through thick and thin, when they say they're leaving and they no longer want to be with you, it is suddenly like, oh my God, what has happened to my life? So it's a tremendous shock, and it's a tremendous just place of complete bewilderment for people. And it's messy, and it's ugly, and it's awful. And I think what happens is, to a lot of people, when something like this happens to them, they think it's happened to them, and what they don't recognize is actually, I have a choice as to how I'm going to journey through this. And that's what I really want to offer people with Divine Divorces, is a new way of looking at things, and a way of changing the conversation around divorce across the world, so that people say, you know what, yeah, this is sad and this is messy, but I'm going to choose to get an end result that serves everybody here. And the illusion is, when you're going through divorce, is actually, I'm not loved. Who will ever love me again? Did the love I have for that person actually exist? Was it real? And so what that does is, it puts somebody into their pain, and it puts them into fear. And of course, when you're responding to everything around you from a place of fear, you get more suffering and more pain. And so what I've sort of realized is, actually there is no separation. You're not separate, you're connected at all times, and the way you do that is to connect to the divine source of love within you. And then I just sort of thought, wow, it's about a divine divorce, because how can you change the conversation in your head? And the only way you can change that conversation is by changing the conversation to love. And it is the complete opposite of what people will do at that time in their life, because they believe that they're separate from love. having been divorced twice, I was looking to create something which would help people to shift themselves from the pain of divorce. And in the process of going through it myself, when I started to look at, well, how have I been able to, you know, create a life that's filled with love and happiness and joy after such a traumatic time, I realized that the key concept, or the key part that shifted me, was actually being able to access my own source of divine love within me. And what I realized is that for most of the time, for myself included, and for, you know, people that I work with, is that we're always looking outside of ourselves to find the answer or the solution. And, you know, the whole premise of divine divorce is that you're never separate. You are always connected to the source of divine love that's within you. And of course, the hardest thing that people go through when their partner says, I'm leaving you, I don't want to be with you, you know, I want a divorce, or, you know, when you discover that someone's had an affair, is that in that moment you believe that all the love you have shared with this person is no longer there. So divine divorce is kind of like when you set the intention at the very beginning, I'm gonna have a divine divorce here, you are putting out there a very clear message to the world, to your partner, your ex-partner, to the person who's journeyed with you so far in life, to your children, to your family. You are putting the message out there that I'm going to create something very different to what is expected by you know, society. You know, we listen to society and what happens when people get divorced, and you hear the horrible stories, you hear the bitterness, the anger, the frustration, the way people end up hating someone who they previously loved and had children with. And when you say, I'm going to have a divine divorce, you are really clearly focusing yourself into a very different end result. And that end result is a healing process for everybody concerned. And, you know, I've been through this twice. I never ever in my wildest dreams imagined, I mean, my parents have been married for 50 years. I never ever thought I would be someone who would get married, get divorced. But I am, and that's part of my journey. And when I separated from my first husband, I just had in my mind, I've shared 12 years of my life with this person. I love him, he's a great guy, but it became obvious we wanted different things. And I had to accept that I wanted a divorce, and it was me that instigated it. And one of the things I said to myself is, we will be friends. And I purposefully said, I'm not going to call him my ex, I'm going to call him my good friend Paul. And that was the intention that I set. And we are good friends now, like 15 years later. You know, at one point he came to stay with me in my home with my new husband and my 2 children. And we created that because I set that intention. And he wasn't initially in that mindset at all. He was in a completely different mindset. He hated me. I just told him I didn't want to be with him. But that is what we created because of that intention. And it's been the same with my, with my second husband, that I have set the intention that I'm going to choose to have a space of love for him in my heart, because he's someone that I've had 2 children with, and he's the father of my children, and he's an amazing person. And just because he made choices that ended up in us getting divorced doesn't mean to say that, he's not a good person. So that is the impact of choosing to see the divine in someone, because that's all there really is our divinity. And people forget that. People forget that when they're arguing over money, and when they're arguing over who gets what piece of furniture, and when they're arguing over who did what, or who slept with who, and what's going to happen to me now, who's going to take care of me. When you're in that mindset, you forget that you're a divine being.